Welcome to the second episode of the Art of Lifting podcast. Today we have Hannah. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Hi, I'm Hannah. I am a nutritionist, I guess powerlifting coach as well, and an athlete myself. And yeah.
So one thing I always find quite funny, so whenever you come up in conversation, I just go by Hannah. Yeah, I call you Hannah. We've met a few times now. I know you as Hannah. And people that haven't met you, they're like, who? And I have to go, 440? Every single time. They're like, oh, I know who you mean. So if anyone doesn't know, your brand is 440. You are 440 training for your Instagram for your lifting, and then 440 performance or coaching for your
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So if anyone doesn't know, 440 is your brand name. Is there a story behind that, by the way? I haven't asked you this before.
There is. You're right. I probably should have introduced myself as 440 too. Fair. That is how I am. Yeah, introduced to other people. There is a story. It's not necessarily actually related to my total or I guess my target, but it just so happens that the name and the number worked out, and I guess now that is ironically the goal that I think I probably naturally led towards to hit, because it just kind of fell into place. So it was kind of meant to be, but the actual origin is completely random, and I'm gonna have to keep it a secret because it's a small group of people that know, and it just started when I began powerlifting, which was at university, and that's as much as I can tell you.
Okay, that is fair enough. I like the mystery behind it. I think it works. I also see, like, when your clients hit a 440 total, I see them like so excited by it. I'm like, that's actually a really nice target that people now can have just linked to your name of your brand. So I think that's cool. I'm happy for you to keep that a secret.
Thank you.
Okay, so uni. You went to uni, I don't know what year you started, but you went to uni to study nutrition, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I took 2 years out before going to university after I finished my A-levels, because I had no idea what I wanted to do. I think I originally planned to do anthropology at Birmingham. I deferred, and then I cancelled my deferral because I then found nutrition, and I think Nottingham was one of the only universities other than Surrey University, which was 20 minutes away from me from home, so I didn't want to go there, that had the degree that I wanted to do. And I didn't do any science A-levels, I did all humanities. So I took a weird online course that I think was accredited by Middlesex University, and I rang Nottingham and I said, will you take me if I take this course? And they said, well, we can't see why not. And I said, well, that's good enough for me. And then that's just where I ended up. So if I hadn't got into Nottingham, I don't think I would have gone to university. I don't know what I would have ended up doing, but yeah, that was in 2020, which was obviously COVID year. And it was really difficult to meet anyone and kind of join clubs. Like, I had planned to do athletics and I think some hockey as well, because that was kind of my previous background, and it was just it was too difficult to get myself to the track in a city that I didn't know, with people that I didn't know how to contact. And a friend of mine actually did powerlifting at his college, so we went to the same school, and then I remained at the school to do my A-levels. He went somewhere else, and they said, oh, when you go to university, I think you should do powerlifting, I think you'd really like it. I know the president of the Nottingham Powerlifting Club, I'll get you in contact. So I was like, great, I have a contact. And I went and just did one trial session, loved it, and then that became my whole university experience. I didn't do anything else.
So with that, then you went to uni to obviously study nutrition, and at this point you didn't do powerlifting. You weren't into powerlifting.
No.
But as anyone can kind of see from the career path you've gone down, you obviously ended up taking that nutrition degree and applying it to powerlifting.
Yeah.
And that's kind of become your niche, powerlifting coaching as a whole.
Yeah.
Did you find what you learned on the nutrition course applied to strength sports? Because I know in my experience, most sports nutrition information that you get given is very endurance based and not very much tailored to strength sports. But I didn't know what your experience was of that.
there was nothing relevant in my degree. And I don't just mean to sports nutrition, I just mean in general. I think I nerded out quite a lot when I became interested in nutrition, and I read all of these books about the gut microbiome and all of these books about allergies and about diet, and I was just fascinated, and I could not have been more excited to begin it at university. And I think because of COVID, a lot of our module choices were taken away, and that meant as a result we were stuck doing, I guess, those core modules that overlapped with other subjects. And as I said, I did not do any science A levels because I was not good at science. I did English and I did psychology, which I guess, you know, is a pseudoscience. I did geography, and you know, I enjoyed writing essays. I can't believe I just said that out loud, but yeah, like I enjoyed the, I guess, personable side of the psychology. And my course was biochemistry, physics, foundation maths. I think I had one module on the basics of nutrition, which was kind of the molecular makeup of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. And I think I got a couple of modules on vitamins and minerals. And I did, I think, another module, which was actually fascinating, on, I guess, public health. But again, when it comes to one-to-one clientele, and I think, you know, working one-on-one with someone's nutrition, nothing. And so a lot of what I learned, I think, wasn't relevant to what I do now. But I think because I had such a knowledge that I had kind of built up myself, that has proved more useful. And the books that I first read are probably some of the first ones that I recommend to clients today. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was useful, no, but you know, it gave me some good skills. And I think being a part of the Association for Nutrition is kind of why I did that degree. And I think being part of that has actually been really useful, because there are resources and kind of like, you know, continued professional development courses available all the time. And I think that's been the value of it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That also doesn't surprise me too much to hear that about the course. You mentioned there that there are some books that you tend to recommend to people. Can you think of them off the top of your head, just for people that are listening?
Yes, I can. So I mean, it depends what your interest is. I always recommend Just Eat It to, I think, people who are struggling with their relationship with food. I think it's a fantastic book. I think there's a lot of value in it, and it's not some of those books where you can pick up, read a little bit, and then put down and kind of digest bit by bit. For those who are also nerds when it comes to the gut microbiome, there's an amazing book called Gut by Julia Enders. For more like holistic nutrition, there's a really good one called Eat Dirt by Dr. Axe, which I find really interesting. And those are kind of my three that I probably find I go back to and open over and over again, because they just have bits and bobs in there where I'm like, I want to read this and teach someone about this. So yeah.
No, that's really good to hear. On my my last podcast I did with the Quinn, actually, because she had a nutritionist for a few months.
Yeah.
One thing she was saying that her nutritionist said to her was, it doesn't matter how long you work with your nutritionist. Some people only work with one for 6 months. Some people work with them through their entire career. But the main thing is teaching people what they need to know to understand how to manage their own nutrition.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, the goal of the nutrition coach is just to be there as support, accountability, that side of things. And it sounds like that's pretty much the same ethos you have.
Yeah, I really strongly agree with that. So I think more so I found in nutrition is that everyone is completely different in the way that they approach nutrition, in the way that they react to nutrition. And I have a policy when people join me, and I say, like, I have a 3-month minimum commitment. The reason being is that I think it takes that long to get to grips with things and like making sustainable change. And I think it's really important to stick with it. And so I found that people should be able to leave me doing everything themselves. It's kind of, I spoke to a physio about this once, and it's ironic, because I guess as nutritionists and physios and I guess therapists, if we do our jobs right, people should leave us, like we should lose business. But equally, I think if you do a good enough job, then people know that you're always there for the support element, and people do come back when it's needed. So yeah, that's kind of the ethos I like to follow, I guess. Like if I've done my job right, people should leave. Yeah.
No, I do completely agree with that. And it's literally the same thing with Quinn. She said, you know, she's been doing what her nutrition coach taught her, and then she's going to go back to her nutrition coach for cutting into comps or
Yeah.
like just nutrition on comp day. And I was saying to her, like, I think that's something really kind of underrated, is just having someone there to make your decisions on
Yeah.
comp week, what to eat the week of comp, what to eat comp day.
Yeah.
And then you can do it yourself probably the rest of the year, but just having that support just around big events like that. So
Exactly.
one less thing you have to think about is always nice. And I think if you show people that you're not there just to take their money and make them rely on you for the support, they're going to want to come back and use you for those experiences.
And like, you know, coaches have coaches, nutritionists have nutritionists. And I think it's never, or, you know, it's hardly ever the case that people don't know what the basis of good nutrition is, but it's the accountability. It's also everyone's life is busy, you know, like life is a lot. And I think just having someone to actually just be able to manage that part for you because you care and it's important to you is really important. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. While we're on the nutrition front, I'll just ask you a few questions around kind of acute cuts, supplements and things, and then we'll go into your coaching as a powerlifting coach, and then we'll talk about your lifting and stuff after. But I thought I would ask you, well, about the gut cut. So firstly, is there like types of people you maybe think it's more suited to? I also want to link into your post you did recently about almonds for gut cutting. If anyone hasn't watched, I think this was the original gut cut video with Steve Denovis. Am I right?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
So Steve Denovi is a massive coach in America. He's a really good coach, don't get me wrong. And he made a video on gut cutting for powerlifters, which is essentially just manipulating the volume in your gut. And essentially you will weigh less just from less volume within your system. It's the simplest way to explain that. And one of the things that he said was to eat, I think he specifically said salted almonds, and essentially get your fats from that. I'm probably butchering that explanation, but that is essentially one of the points of the video that he made. And don't get me wrong, the gut cut is a fantastic method of weight cutting. I think majority of people that do cut do use that in some way now. But you recently made a post on why almonds maybe aren't the best choice of food. It would be interesting to talk about. And I also thought if there's any kind of people that you maybe wouldn't recommend gut cutting for, maybe based on their general diet, like if they're not eating much volume or anything like that, it might not apply. And I just wanted your opinion on all of that, basically.
Yeah. So essentially, obviously, when I started powerlifting, you know, it's a weight class related sport, and I started hearing about all of these methods. You know, the first one I was, you know, just taught is, oh, just bring your meal time back, you know, a bit the night before and you'll weigh in lighter. So that's what I did for my first competition. I was like, wow, like, you know, it worked. I weighed in like 800 grams lighter than I did the morning before. And then you start hearing about the gut cut, which I think is the next one that you're taught. And I think people are just told, oh yeah, do this and do it yourself and you'll be fine. And I started having like a lot of people, I guess, come to me or ask me questions, just, you know, drop me a message on Instagram saying, oh, like I practiced a gut cut and it didn't work. And, you know, it just made me think all of these people are just eating almonds and Haribos and like having protein shakes. And to me, I was looking at it like, this is not good nutrition. Like, I know that Usain Bolt ate 20 chicken nuggets before his, you know, biggest race ever, right? But we're not all Usain Bolt. And also, I think people in powerlifting spend so much time on the importance of everything being the same as comp day. So everyone will, well, you know, I think people have trended away, but certainly when I started a couple of years ago, it was very common for everyone to do SBD Saturday at the time that their like competition was, and they aimed to replicate everything. So it was so similar. And I think to myself, well, no one eats like this before their SBD days. And like, I get it's for the purpose of cutting weight and cleaning out your gut, but these people have probably never eaten almonds. And for me, one of the reasons I got into nutrition is because I had a lot of intolerances and, you know, a lot of digestive issues, and almonds were a massive trigger because you'd eat so many and you'd get a really irritated gut lining. And so all of these people were just saying, oh yeah, like I only lost 200 grams, but I'm eating almonds. And then I thought to myself, well, almonds are fiber and you're meant to be cutting out fiber. So I'm one of those people, I have to know about something. So I did a lot of research, and the principle comes from, as you said, like Steve Novi's gut cut protocol, which is 3/5 of your diet or caloric intake is protein shakes and almonds. And as I put in the post, like, the concept makes sense because almonds weigh very little for the amount of calories that they have. They're a good source of protein, they're a good source of fats, and like, it's not necessarily that you need the fats, but they're the bits that make it calorie dense, right? And so if you are someone who regularly gets a lot of fiber in your diet, and regularly has a large volume of food, eating almonds will probably be fine because it's something you're used to. But for me, adding something that could potentially cause your gut quite a lot of irritation, and having a food that you haven't eaten before, like, let's be honest, pretty much all of us have had a protein shake or eaten Oreos or eaten Haribos. Like, adding those things into your diet temporarily, probably going to be fine, but adding different foods that you're not used to, that's where it kind of raised alarm bells, and I was like, why are people doing this? And I think, leading on from that, as I said, that the gut cut's going to be more effective for those that have fiber in their diet, because the whole point is that you're taking something away. But if there's nothing there in the first place, and you quite often eat, highly processed or energy dense foods like Oreos, and you get the majority or, a significant percentage of your calories a day from that, then you're not really taking anything away from your diet. Your food's going to be low in volume and low in fiber, so there's not really going to take much away. So I wouldn't say that gut cuts are as effective for people who don't have an amazing diet. Now, obviously, if you're like a 105 male lifter and you eat 5,000 calories a day and half of that is from, like, calorie dense foods, that's fine, because that's still a significant amount of food and food volume, which is why I found that for lighter weight lifters, gut cuts may not be very effective, just because they eat a lot little and, like, in terms of volume. I've done practice gut cuts with, like, the lightest weight lifter classes, under 59, under 66, and we're looking at like 200 to 300 grams, just because their digestive systems are working incredibly quickly, which means, there's regular bowel movements, but also there's just not a lot of food in their system in the first place. So I would say that, like, it's obviously doable, and I think it depends how much weight you need to cut, but I think, like, gut cuts may be less effective for those on the lighter end of the scale. But on the other end, like, vegans eat like 60 grams of protein a day. You give a vegan a gut cut and they will cut more than probably someone trying to do a water cut in a lightweight class. Like, it's just so easy because they just cut all of the food out of their diet that's, fiber, which is pretty much all of it. So for vegans, gut cuts are super effective. And I'd say probably those middle to higher weight classes and those that have a good diet with high volume will probably see more of a drop in weight successfully.
Yeah, I think that is a perfect explanation. I'm just going to correct this tiny little thing that I know you meant to say 60 grams of fiber for vegans, not protein, just in case anyone listening gets confused. Basically, high fiber, obviously vegans tend to eat really high fiber. Gut cut will be really effective. I know you meant that, but just in case anyone doesn't know what you meant by that, meant fiber. So, okay, if you wouldn't then recommend a gut cut, say it's a lighter weight lifter or someone that just generally doesn't eat a lot of fiber, that eat quite calorie dense foods, what would your next protocol be? Obviously, you mentioned eating your like final meal the night before a few hours earlier would definitely have an impact. But outside of that, would you then say maybe water load, or is it another method that you would probably recommend?
So I think this is when it starts to depend on the lifter and their previous experiences. I think there are other steps that you can kind of almost add on as an addition to certain, like, methods of cutting. So, with a gut cut, or actually with any sort of cut, a couple of layers that are kind of, I guess, almost optional. You have looking at salt manipulation and looking at carbohydrate manipulation as well, or, like, I guess, macro manipulation. And essentially, if you get someone to have a lot of salt in the week leading up to their competition and then you halve it, salt is responsible, or the sodium in the salt is one of those main transporters for allowing waters into your cell. So to summarize, if you cut salt out of your diet, less salt is going to be retained and you're flushing more of it out of your system. And I find, like, for some people this can be really, really effective in dropping weight, but this is when looking at people's diets becomes really important, and you're going to have to say to someone, look, how much salt do you have regularly? Because again, it's one of those things, if someone's already having, you know, God forbid, like 3,000 to 4,000 like milligrams of like salt a day, then adding another 1,000 on top of that, yeah, it's going to make a small difference, but not as much as someone who has a low salt diet. So that's another potential way of kind of cutting, I guess, weight by water. And then the other is carbohydrates. Now, so for every gram of carbohydrate in your, I guess, that you consume, 3 to 4 grams of water are stored. So if you've got someone who maybe has 25 to, you know, maybe lower percent fats and the rest is made up of carbohydrates and protein, then you could probably a couple days out halve their carbohydrate intake, and then if needed halve it again. And what you do is you replace those carbohydrates with fats, so they're still getting the same amount of energy, it's just from a different source. Now, I think, again, like, people have mixed responses to this. I think this is when the rehydration protocol, or like kind of refeed after weigh-ins, becomes a bit more important, because some people are absolutely fine with a carb and salt manipulation. Some people feel crampy, they feel shaky. I think it depends how many carbohydrates they have in their diet to start with. Some people naturally have quite low carbohydrate intake, and this is where it's sort of nuanced to preference of the person. I think the first cut that I've ever done, and I was sat at about 57.7 for my super training comp last year, probably almost this time last year. And I did a carbohydrate cut and a salt manipulation. I didn't quite realize, which is really bad of me as a nutritionist, like, that I had quite a low carbohydrate intake. And so halving that already, now, carbohydrates are stored in your liver and also in your muscles, and so whilst you're depleting the muscle stores of like glycogen, you still have carbohydrates. So it's not like you're going into ketosis in 2 days. That's not what happens. But I get quite low blood sugar and I feel quite funky anyway, like regularly, if I don't eat every 4 hours. And I think the carbohydrate was not the way to go for cutting that out, because I got really bad cramps on the day, which I've never experienced ever. And I was like, okay, like, lesson learned, noted. Like, it's more important to definitely look at everyone's diet going into a cut, so that you know probably what's going to work best. So as I said, those are two things that you could probably add to a gut cut to kind of just add that little bit more, like, I guess, weight loss. And then water cuts, in my opinion, are probably the most predictable. And I think as a nutritionist working with a client, from a nutritionist point of view, I find them a lot easier, because I can give people like a set load of, okay, you are having like 7 liters of water today, tomorrow, the next day, or, you know, whatever protocol you decide to give someone. And that's kind of it, you know, and it's kind of hard to mess up, and you will be able to like see the trend in weight, like evening weight and morning weight, a lot easier. But I find with gut cuts, they always seem to be more confusing, because there's always, oh, can I eat this? Can I eat that? Oh, well, I ate this and it didn't work. And then, well, you know, white rice is technically, you know, low fiber. So can I have that? And then you think, well, does that mean that you're going to, I guess, retain more water because it's carbohydrates, you know, it's more carbohydrates? And so I find that there are a lot more complications, and you try and write someone a more stricter food plan, but then they don't always have access to that food, or they don't like the food, or they can't eat the food that you've prescribed. You think, okay, right, actually, this becomes a lot more complicated. But then obviously for the athlete, who's the priority, some people do not want to drink 7 liters of water. And that's like, you know what, that's fair enough. Like, maybe they've had a previous bad experience. It just makes them feel sick. And it's like, that's something you've got to consider as well. So when considering a water cut, I will always ask the athlete, like, are you open to this? Is this something that you'd be comfortable doing? Sometimes you're not going to have a choice, because you're not going to make weight otherwise. But yeah. And then I guess obviously the last one would be your saunaing, which again, some people are fine doing. and it doesn't affect their performance. But I think some people can not do it right, and it can affect their performance quite drastically. So
Yeah, I think that is obviously all incredibly helpful information for anyone listening. But I think one other thing as well that I think is worth mentioning is if you are going to hire a nutrition coach and you know you have to cut into a competition, please communicate what your diet is actually like so that we have the information that we need. Because that's something I've struggled with in the past with clients as well. It's like you want to give them all this information to help them, but if they don't tell you what they're actually consuming and accurately what they're actually consuming, it's not going to be effective.
Exactly. Like I've had a few instances, and sometimes I think, you know what, this is probably on me to ask this question. Like it's always a learning curve, but even asking small things like, okay, you cook with, so on one of my like forms, like application forms, one of the questions is, what do you cook with? And the reason being, like, I don't, necessarily care whether you cook with olive oil or butter, but when it comes to cutting, I need to know how much you're using, because if you're using 2 tablespoons of olive oil and you're not accounting for that in your calories, that actually makes quite a lot of difference when it comes to cutting. And I did have a situation where it came up maybe a couple weeks out of comp, and I just thought to myself, this person is not dropping weight as I expected. Like, we have cut their calories, I'm not cutting them anymore, we've increased activity, like, what is going on? And it just came to me, and I asked the question. I was like, oh my god, you've been in a 500 calorie surplus because you've been making fried rice. And I didn't think to ask how much oil you were using. But yeah, it is things like that. And obviously you kick yourself for not asking that question, but also like then you realize how many nuances there are to nutrition and how complex cutting can be, because it's not just a set protocol, right? Like you might have a protocol of, okay, you're drinking this much water for this many days and it works great for one person, and then one person you're like, well, what happened? Why didn't it work? What's going on? So yeah,
it is a learning curve and everyone is so individual, which I think is also why, like, if you do think you want to hire a nutritionist, you should probably try and start with them as early as possible.
Yeah, for
to
sure.
learn how each other work, learn habits, learn communication, and all of that.
Yeah.
I have a few other random questions. So, on the topic of cutting, with people that are taking creatine, is that something you would ever recommend people to cut out leading into a competition? Obviously, it might depend on the person, what they're weighing, and things like that. But what are your thoughts on that?
So, I think it does depend on how creatine responsive someone is. So I will always ask, okay, well, how much weight did you put on when you started taking creatine? And if it was quite a significant amount, then I'd be like, well, you know what, you'd probably drop a bit if you stopped taking it. I think it also depends how long they've been loading it for. How like long ago they loaded it. Because like in the research that I've done around creatine, it seems that your stores tend to return to baseline, I want to say like around 6 weeks. So if you loaded 6 weeks ago and then you're just taking your baseline amount every day, research seems to just suggest your body kind of gets used to it. And I still yet to find out whether that means that the bloating from taking it like completely dissipates and therefore it's not really affecting water retention levels anymore. Because I find for some people, if they're just, if they loaded 6 to 8 weeks ago and then they're just still taking it every day and you take it out, they might not feel an effect like in terms of water weight, and they might not drop a lot. But then I've had a couple clients where I'm like, you know what, yeah, like just take it out because that's what you've done previously, like stop taking it 4 days out, or 5 days out, and their weight has dropped. Like it has helped with like the weight dropping process. So again, it's one of those annoying answers where it's like it does depend. If you can keep it in, I'd say it doesn't hurt, because obviously like it does make people feel a bit fuller and like I guess stronger. But then I guess your other solution would be if you were to take it with your refeed protocol. So I know that a lot of people do just take creatine before their training rather than just like an everyday supplement, and that might be like a way around it if you feel like safer and just kind of covering all bases by taking it out a few days before. Oh yeah, so if you are to take it out, I'd probably say that I think strength probably holds on for about I want to say about 10 days, but you're probably, in terms of seeing like the weight drop effect, if you take it 5 days, like stop taking it 5 days out. So yeah, it's mixed. Like if you can keep it in, then I'd say do, like there's no harm. But if actually you're trying to cover all bases to cut weight and you don't want to water cut, it's probably one of those things like, okay, like we'll look at manipulating salt, we'll look at manipulating carbohydrates, let's take your creatine out just in case, like that kind of thing. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Just while on the topic of supplements, and obviously creatine being a supplement, are there any other supplements that you tend, obviously it will be dependent from person to person, but are there any supplements that generally you would recommend for most powerlifters out there?
So for not like, I guess in general, without considering like powerlifting specific, yes, I'd say vitamin D. I think people don't really realize how little vitamin D they get from working 9 to 5, for living in this country. It's kind of quite appropriate with it being just grey and miserable and rainy outside currently. Vitamin D is a really big one. I think omega-3, I know that a lot of people are not big fish eaters, and that's fine, but get your omega-3 in. I think like it's going to help a lot. And then if you want to make it, I guess, a reason as to why for helping powerlifting, it's a good anti-inflammatory. Like take your omega-3s. Those are probably the main ones that I recommend to people. A lot of people struggle with sleep nowadays. I think it's just because we're all probably like a little bit tired and a little bit wired. So I think magnesium glycinate is always quite a good one. The reason glycinate rather than another magnesium supplement is just the way it interacts with the body, and glycinate being a derivative of glycine, which is also good for promoting sleep. And I find that magnesium glycinate, as opposed to the other ones, so there's magnesium citrate and another one, which are kind of common magnesium supplements. Magnesium glycinate seems to be better in terms of, I think, the gut. So I think it helps promote like regular bowel movements, whereas I think one of them kind of promotes constipation, or not necessarily, like I'm not saying you get constipated if you take it, but I think magnesium glycinate seems to be the best supplement out there. Obviously if you're struggling with energy, and I think around like women who struggle really badly with fatigue around their like after their period, or like when their period has come, I think iron supplements is always important to look into. But then again, magnesium's good for cramps, it's good for just like pain, headaches. So those are probably my main go-tos. And then if you were to ask me about supplementation for like powerlifting specifics, so when you're looking at training, caffeine, and I think with caffeine, L-theanine as well. So everyone's different, but I have found, for me, I started taking L-theanine for anxiety. It's a natural component found in green tea, and because that's where it is from, there's no limit to how much you can take. Like I think, if your anxiety is really bad, but it's the first thing that I found that actually kicks in with half an hour, and then all of a sudden I'm just like, oh, I feel fine. And the reason that you take it with caffeine is that it enhances focus. And I found that I like experimented taking a few pre's, and I always found that the pre's with L-theanine really helped with my focus. Like that's the reason that I would take pre. It was to kind of focus and lock in, rather than I needed like a big energy boost, because I had enough of the adrenaline from the anxiety already. So yeah, I'd say caffeine with L-theanine. You can get L-theanine just kind of separate, like supplement, like tablets or like capsules on its own. Obviously there are pre's out there that have L-theanine. Always check the ingredients of the pre's, like see what the measurements are. And then with regards to anxiety, so L-theanine works similarly, but kind of more effective for me than ashwagandha. I know that a lot of people take ashwagandha nowadays, and they seem to, say, oh yeah, like it helps my focus, it helps the cognition, like it helps with my training, helps with my anxiety, and that's great. Like ashwagandha for me made me feel a bit funky and kind of gave me weird dreams. I know that's the case for some people, and then some people find that CBD is really effective, right? So you kind of have a lot of different herbal supplements out there that affect people differently, and that's why it's always really important to be careful when you see recommendations online, because like just because it works for someone doesn't mean it's necessarily going to have the same effect for you. So you've just kind of got to find what works. But yeah, those are probably the ones that I'd recommend for training, because like if you want to go hard on accessories and kind of feel like you're doing hard work, then obviously like you've got your pump pre's, you've got your other things out there, like what are the ones that kind of the names escape me, but yeah, I would say that that's probably the main one that I'd recommend for training.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes complete sense. On the topic, you mentioned about like obviously iron for women around their period and things, and just like hormones in general. I know or I've seen you posted before about, you know, diet's effect on hormones, especially with like women and their cycle and everything. I just wondered if you had, I don't know if it would be general advice to people that maybe not sure where to start when it comes to like maybe their cycle, they just really struggle throughout it, or energy levels or anything like that. If there's anything you would recommend maybe looking into, or even something, a book to read or somewhere to go to find more information around that, because diet has such an impact on our hormones anyway. And I think as well, I think we've actually spoken about this in person before, about people's fear around fats, which are
Yes.
important for hormones. And I've actually seen other coaches quite a few times, and not so much recently. I think hopefully it's kind of dying off, where, you know, we're in a sport, so fats aren't as important. We need high carbs for energy, we need protein for recovery. Fats can just be what we cut out when we need to lose weight and things, but actually no, fats are very important.
Yeah.
And especially I think strength athletes as well. I think it's an important thing to talk about. So I just wondered if you had any insight into any of that.
Yeah, okay, so a lot. Firstly, you are your biggest source of information when it comes to your cycle, so track it and track everything. I did everything on, I think, my Apple Health, just because I couldn't be bothered to download another app because I knew that I'd forget to use it. So Apple Health, I just like, I think it has like a load of symptoms. There's an other button for other. I think a lot of people use like a Clue app, but when I say track everything, I mean literally like track the times you're angry, the times that you're happy, the times that you feel on top of the world, like the times that you drop a spoon and burst into tears. Like literally track everything, because I guarantee you will see a pattern, like 100%. I think when I was tracking everything, I also found that my weight, I went through, I think probably a period about 4 months where, out of interest, I was like, right, I'm going to weigh myself every day, because I'm convinced that there is like a really solid pattern here associated with my mood. Every 2 weeks, so ovulation, and then also when my menstruation started, my weight would drop from 57.1 to 56.4, and then it would go straight up the next day without fail. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So yeah, track everything, because you are going to like as I said, everyone's different, so you're going to be your biggest source of information. If you find that you are like struggling, like really struggling with PMS, or I don't know, like headaches, or like ovulation, like symptoms of like period around your ovulation, I think it's worth getting a blood test. You can get blood tests to kind of look at your hormone levels. And I think actually, in terms of just getting a general health checkup, I think blood tests like have loads of value. You can see, okay, am I deficient in anything? Like, am I struggling? I think I went to the doctors again probably about this time last year, and I had no vitamin D. And I know a lot of people that has happened to recently. They're like, oh yeah, I have none of that in my like I am on the low end of the low end. So yeah, it's always worth getting a blood test. There's massive value in it. So that there is an amazing book which is basically my Bible when it comes to helping like women around like their menstruation or just menstrual cycle in general. It's called Period Power by Maisie Hill, and it will have everything in there, to be honest, like literally everything. And it also at the end of each section kind of has like a protocol when it comes to nutrition as well. Like I think it's unrealistic for someone to expect themselves to completely change their diet every week depending on their cycle, but I think the general consensus, which is what I remind people, is like, okay, but if you suffer from like menstrual related migraines, then the point about magnesium and taking magnesium supplements is going to be relevant to you. So maybe having more magnesium, like I guess heavy foods around that time is going to benefit you, rather than, oh, like this is how it says I should eat, so I'm going to change what I eat every week, that kind of thing. That being said, I think there definitely is a merit in eating more calories just before your period. And I found that when I managing like a female's nutrition who has a cycle and who is strongly affected by their cycle, in particular fatigue in the week leading up to, I found that we can like increase their calories by about 300 to 400, which is probably like estimated the amount that you burn, and their weight change will be negligible, but they just feel better. So it's just small things like that, and I think it's really, really important to have a look at, especially then obviously when it comes to cutting, because as you said, like it's a weight class related sport, and I think everything in terms of well-being kind of goes out the window. So it's like, well, these are the numbers that I've been told I need to hit, and it's never as simple as that. You know, stress from my experience has impacted everyone's weight, and there's not necessarily a fact or figure I can give you as to how much and to why and what hormones are related. Like I'm sure there's research out there, but the fact is that you can't objectively measure stress in a client leading up to comp. Like there could be numerous factors, you don't know to what extent it's affecting them. And I think that's where like actually looking at the macro split and not just doing, oh well, they're going into a cut, so less than 25% fats is going to be what we need to do so they have higher carbohydrates, so they have energy because they're in a deficit, right? So it's like, well, if you're doing that for a long period of time and they're underweight, like, you know, they're not where I guess a healthy weight should be sitting, they're going to be needing those hormones. And, you know, fats, you know, what form cholesterol is what's responsible for producing our hormones. So if you're like depriving someone from calories and their weight's already sitting quite low, and it's like, well, they need the carbohydrates for energy, but then they're also just feeling flat because their hormones or like testosterone production has just plummeted. It's a bit like, okay, well, we can't just do what the numbers say we're meant to do. You know, there are other factors involved. That's been my experience anyway. It's always been something I've been hyper conscious of because people just seem to eat such low fats. And at the end of the day, like, as you said, we're not an endurance sport. Like our consumption of carbohydrates does not need to be that high because the majority of us will work 9 to 5 and then we'll go to the gym for a couple of hours and probably not do any cardio. And like the average population should probably be having around like 35 to 40% of like good healthy fats as their like carb, like macronutrient split. So yeah.
No, I think that is really interesting. And I think a lot of the misinformation probably does come from the fact that there isn't a lot of information out there for strength athletes and nutrition. Like
Yeah.
even the course I did, it was all tailored around endurance sports. It was completely, and it was only really through my own training and my own lifting and my own diet that I started to learn, well, that's definitely not going to work. That's not going to apply. What needs to change? And I remember when I first did my course, my fats were so low and I wasn't recovering. I think I ended up getting injured and I felt awful. And then I just increased my fats. My weight dropped when I increased my fats. And I felt 10 times better. And like you said, I mean, I didn't have a period at the time anyway, just because of the contraception I was on. But I'm pretty confident that if I did, would not have been good. I probably wouldn't have had one, or my cycle would have just been horrible. So it's very important to eat fats. And I think when you see sports nutritionists posting information or sports nutritionist articles, anything like that, it's important to firstly be like, okay, well, is this strength specific? Is this that type of sport, or is it endurance based? Because it's very different. And you know, we don't need the same amount of carbs in our diet as a long distance runner. Like we're going to the gym. It's very different. And yeah, I just think there's a lot of, I think it's getting better, but I think there's always been a bit of misinformation and misunderstanding around what applies to strength athletes versus what applies to endurance athletes.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true because, you know, we want to learn, we want to make our training optimal. And I think we all see research that's based on like, you know, sports nutrition and go, oh, I think we should be doing this. And I think what I have also found really fascinating is I think the prevalence of I would say ADHD in the sport. And what I have found, and I think there needs to be way more research on it, especially when and like on women specifically. And if I was to ever go back into education, I think this is definitely something that I'd want to look at. If you look on the NHS website, it says like on the fats section, teaching you about fats, like that. I think people with ADHD may benefit from increasing fats in their diet. The reason being, as we said, because it helps with the production of the hormones, and those hormonal fluctuations or lack of, and those imbalances are what kind of make us struggle around our menstrual cycle when it comes to mood, etc. And I think that there has obviously been some sort of link made between like our intake of fats and ADHD. As I said, there needs to be a lot more research into it, but I have found anecdotally that those clients that I've worked with where we have naturally increased their fats, they have found that their regulation of their symptoms has been so much easier, or like is so much better. And they found that I guess, yeah, their symptoms are a lot less, I want to say, chaotic, for want of a better word. And I found that really fascinating as well. And it kind of shows, well, that to me is more important than getting like 35% of your like caloric intake from carbohydrates because you have an SBD day. You know what I mean? I think I always put like well-being and like general health first, especially when it comes to powerlifting, before looking at those like specifics for training.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think if you're not looking after general well-being outside of training, I mean, it's an obvious statement, but you're not going to feel good when you are training.
Yeah, no,
just
exactly.
having that little bit of extra carbs for a little bit of extra energy, in theory, you're probably going to feel worse anyway because of the fact that you don't feel good the rest of the time.
Exactly.
And I think it's really important. Also, we will move on from nutrition in a sec, but I know you're also very big on whole foods, I believe.
Yeah.
And I do think this is becoming much more common information. I think when I first got into the sport, everyone just followed along with like the famous bodybuilders and the YouTubers that were always just like, oh no, if it fits your macros, it's fine. If it fits your macros, it's fine. And I do mostly track macros, and most of my clients, we look at macros as a whole, but we also have to look at the breakdown of what you're eating to hit those macros, which I think is something that is being talked about more, but for a long time it just was completely neglected.
Yeah. So there are two reasons why, like, I guess this is my focus. The first, okay, I want to preface with saying that, some clients I've had, when they start with me, they message me and they're like, oh, I didn't want to check in this week because I had a pizza and I'm so sorry, like it was my friend's birthday. And I was like, I hope you enjoyed that pizza. I hope you enjoyed that brownie that came afterwards. And like, I hope you had a fabulous evening. I'm not going to get mad at you. There is a time and place for all foods. Food is not just for fueling ourselves, and that's why I don't think it should be limited to numbers. I think food is social, it's cultural, it's for the heart as well as for your body in general, right? And I think there is a place for every single type of food, whether it is ultra processed, whether it's processed, whatever you want to call it. But the reason I get people to focus on whole foods is for that reason. I think macro tracking is a really important tool so that people can understand how much they're eating and how much they consume, because if they've never done it before and then you get them to actually track it, a lot of them will be like, oh crap, like I didn't realize I was eating that much. And whether that's more than they thought or less than they thought, I've had both extremes, right? And I think it's a really important tool. But I think when it comes to, as you said, like if it fits your macros, the aim of people, like what I want people to be able to do when they leave like coaching with me, I guess, is to know what food feels good for them and to be able to do it without looking at the numbers all the time. And if you stick with the if it fits your macros principle, then they can kind of, I want to say that they would leave and not be able to look at a plate of food and know how many calories or, whether it's going to fuel them if it was just not whole foods and just kind of like a Tesco's meal deal. The other reason is that in terms of feeling better in themselves, feeling energized, feeling satiated, the way I like to look at it and explain it is, firstly, in whole foods, like, nature's pretty smart, right? And there's a reason that you have the certain micronutrients and macronutrients in a fruit or in like a grain that you do. it's giving you everything you need together in a way that the micronutrients will work together in your body. And like, we can't know every single thing about the food matrix, but I think the food matrix, which is the combination of what I've mentioned about macros and micros in a food, is really important, because there are some micronutrients that compete against each other when they go into the body, and they can like mess with the absorption of one or another. And I think that's so complicated and so unnecessary to have to explain to a client, right? But if I just said to someone, I was like, look, if you eat this food, one, it's going to give you everything you need, but two, I think when it comes to powerlifting, what people are more interested in is that you can eat a lot more by consuming a lot less, right? Because half of that, like whole food, like a lot of it is going to be more fiber, it's going to be more things feeding your gut to break down. And so once you're kind of eating less calories and actually realized, your body is working harder to digest it, which means it's functioning more efficiently, but it's also consuming less of the calories than it says on the packet, but you also feel more full. And people really like the idea, and it's not just powerlifters, just people in general, of getting less for more. And I think that kind of sells it a lot to people, right? And I think when it comes to when I've got to people eating more of this diet, like everyone has come back to me and gone, I feel so much better now, and those are the foods I'm actually wanting to eat by choice. And people who start with me who go, I'm a really picky eater, then suddenly become not a picky eater, and that I find that, you know, I get a message from them going, oh, I tried this food today, and I'm like, wow, like you would have laughed in my face if I told you you'd be eating that in a couple months. And it's really nice to see that change in the progression. And what I find with people who kind of just eat like meal deals every day out of convenience, once they kind of get out of that habit, they just feel better. Like they just they just feel better, they feel energized, they feel happier. And it's a really interesting change in mindset, I think. So
I like what you said there about when people come to you, they're really picky eaters, because this is me. So especially when I'm nowhere near as bad for it now, but I am a picky eater. But also obviously, like with nutrition stuff, like it's a massive interest of mine. I know I need to feel my body and make my body feel as good as possible. And obviously you mentioned there is a time and a place for like processed food, whatever you want to call it. But like I've learned obviously over the years of doing this for so long that I feel miles better when I don't eat things like a Domino's pizza, or I go out for like a greasy burger or anything like that, which is a food that I used to pretty much live on when I was a teenager. It was so bad. But now it's like, actually, I don't, unless it's a social occasion where obviously I want to just get involved and spend time with people and not think about what I'm eating, which is completely fair. I actually don't want to eat that stuff anymore.
No,
because exactly. I know I will feel, if I don't feel terrible straight away, the next day I'm going to wake up, I'm going to feel inflamed, I'm going to feel tired, I'm going to feel lethargic, and my body's not going to feel good. My body won't kind of function as smoothly for like a day or two. And I just, in my head, I'm like, well, it's not really worth it unless it's a social thing where I get to enjoy time with people. I don't have to cook. Fair enough. I'll enjoy it and I'll enjoy what I'm eating. But when you get used to eating a certain way, you do notice how much better your body feels.
Yeah, 100%. And one of my favorite facts actually is, so the gut microbiome in your stomach, it can not only dictate your mood and like a variety of other things, but it does dictate what you eat. Because if you feed yourself certain foods, like certain prebiotics that your stomach thrive off, so you know you have certain bacteria like the lactobacillus, and that one enjoys eating, like for example, like your garlics, your onions, your kind of those kind of what are they called, allium vegetables, right? And if you start eating more of them, and it might be that you never have had a particular craving for them before, you may have just previously craved Doritos, but if you start eating these foods, you will find all of a sudden you start craving it, and it's because you're feeding that particular microbial diversity, and they send signals to the brain saying we're hungry for this, and it will genuinely rewire your brain and change the foods that you're craving. And you feel it happen. Like I think a couple of years ago, I didn't know what kimchi was. If you told me I was going to start eating fermented cabbage, I'd be like, yeah, that's really funny. That sounds disgusting. And now I have it every day, because if I don't have it, I'm genuinely like, where is my kimchi? Like, where is it? Like, it's the food I crave. And it's not me, because I'm not craving fermented cabbage. How can I be, right? And there's definitely a lot there to do with if you feed your body the right, or I don't want to say the right types of food, but certain types of foods, it's just as like if you regularly eat like brownies or like chocolate ice cream, you will crave it because probably there's a few, you know, bacteria in your stomach who go, we really like that and we want more of that. And I find it's kind of cool to think that we are not directly completely in control of ourselves. Like there are other things going on there that dictate what we eat, but it is easy to build those habits. So yeah.
No, I actually, that was really interesting. Before we go into your coaching as a powerlifting coach, like the lifting side, do you have time to keep talking? Because I realize we've been talking for a while.
Yes, I have time. I'm really enjoying this.
All right, perfect. So nutrition, I think we've covered the main things I wanted to talk through. You also coach powerlifting, you coach the lifting side of it as well. And I believe you got into that as a junior coach for EST. Was that when you first started, or were you coaching a little bit before that?
No, so that's how I started coaching. So I think I must have been powerlifting for, I want to say, about a year, and then I think Owen and Jacob reached out to me to ask me to do a few like nutritional sides for them, and I think Owen and I trained in Nottingham Strong, like the old Nottingham Strong, together, and he was club coach for Nottingham. And yeah, he just said, you know, would you be interested in being mentored? And I just said yes. I was like, I'd absolutely be interested. Like that would be really cool. And it kind of just went from there. And yeah, so I was junior coach with them for I think a year and a half. And yeah, that's how my, I guess, powerlifting coaching journey started for sure.
So you were a coach with them for about a year and a half. Obviously, I don't
Yeah.
know the full timeline here. You then went off on your own, and I think
Yeah.
when did you graduate? Did you graduate earlier this year or last year?
So I graduated last June, and then I did so I finished everything last June. I deferred my graduation to December. So I technically finished university last June, kind of did my dissertation, everything, got the certificates in December, and then started, like my own like nutrition and powerlifting from January this year.
Yeah, and you are full-time. I don't know what month it was you went full-time coach, but you are full-time coaching, which is very exciting. I wanted to know kind of how you found that transition, how you found that leap to making that your full-time income, your full-time job, going self-employed, and yeah, just your experience of that.
So I definitely say my experience was quite unique in that, so when I finished university, I got a job straight away. I got a job with SPD, and I was working there for a couple months, and I became really unwell. And so it wasn't really my it wasn't really my choice to leave. Like I had to leave for like medical reasons. And I think that kind of put me in a position where I was like, you know, everything in life happens for a reason, right? And I did this degree for a reason. I think it must have been around October time that I had to leave, but it was around that time that obviously I was still doing the powerlifting coaching for EST. Like I still had a few clients, and I thought, you know what, this is kind of my chance. It's kind of been handed for me. So I spent a few months getting better from October to about December time, and I was like, right, well, I'm gonna have to live and get money somehow. So I was like, right, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it. And I think I was in a fortunate position, ironically, where I was like, I literally have nothing to lose. Like, you know, I've already reached a point where I've had to leave a job because I need to like get better and put my health first. And so that was actually like, it was a blessing because it meant that I had this choice where I was like, I could do anything. You know, I could go back to my job, or I could do this, I could give it a go. And so I just took a leap of faith because I genuinely was at the point where I was like, I realized that I had nothing to lose. And I think that's a really fortunate position to be in, because I know that people going into full-time coaching, it's often they have to leave a job that they've been at for quite a while. And I think it's really hard to make that decision because you're going from sustainable, reliable, predictable income to something that, you know, if you fuck up or if you drop the ball, or, you know, if you don't manage yourself, then that's your income. And I think that lesson did teach me kind of taking a leap of faith, where I was a bit like, well, if it doesn't work out, like I'll be fine, because, you know, it hasn't worked out before and I'm fine. So I'd say that I was really lucky ending up in that position, and I think I've just been really lucky with how it's gone, because I was not expecting myself to be so busy so quickly, and I think that's been really, really nice. And I think what everyone probably experiences going into full-time coaching, or feeling like you have elements of success, is the imposter syndrome that comes with it. And that's really hard because it makes you want to quit, but then you're like, well, this is my only job, I can't I have to keep going. And I think learning how to be, I guess, a businesswoman as well as a nutritionist, as well as a powerlifting coach, and kind of developing and advancing all of those kind of areas and learning how to do them, as well as then coaching the powerlifting and actually like coaching your clients and then bringing on more clients. It's a lot to juggle. And I wouldn't change it for anything, because I think I've learned so much information and my brain feels physically saturated. But it has been interesting to kind of manage. I feel like, okay, when are my times for learning? Like, I've definitely had to go like, okay, I'm going to focus this month on learning this about powerlifting, because, or like coaching, because this is what I'm struggling with, or this is where my weaknesses are. But that means I'm not going to have time to do like this bit of research that I wanted to do for nutrition like this month. And it's like, oh, I have clients, I've actually quite a few competing, I need to kind of focus on that this month, that kind of thing. But yeah, this year has just flown by because of how busy it's been. But like, I'm so, like, I wouldn't change how I ended up here at all. And it's, I think I've just been really lucky, to be honest. So yeah.
I definitely agree with what you said. Like, I do think things happen for a reason, and it set you up. You might as well take the leap of faith, and it's clearly worked. You're doing incredibly well. I literally see you every time I go on my Instagram. I either see you or I see your lifters tagging you. Like,
well, that's good.
It's great. You're doing really well. Also, just want to touch on, you mentioned imposter syndrome, which is something that I have struggled with massively, and I feel like it's only been like the last year that I've actually had the confidence to say, no, I do know what I'm doing, and feel like I can actually have a voice in this space. And I just wondered what your experience of that was. Obviously, you were like, I think starting with EST was probably a really great way to start. You had Jacob and Owen there to support you if you needed it. And I also think the fact that they took on a female junior coach as well is a really massive thing, and I think that's really important because there aren't a lot of us in the space. And I think that definitely helps as well. But yeah, I just wanted your experience on the imposter syndrome side.
No, I was honestly incredibly lucky to have been given that experience by both of them. And I think, as you said, it was nice, like as a female, to kind of have that opportunity. And the reason I say that is, I think when I kind of left to do my own thing just so I could focus on nutrition, and also it was an element of, I need to prove to myself that I can actually do it myself. Like, I know I need to kind of grow it and kind of do it on my own. Even more scary, even throwing myself into deep end even more. But what I was not expecting was to have male clients come to me, and I have, and that's been really nice. And I think that was probably the first kind of, oh my god, that was probably the first wave of imposter syndrome, because I was like, why would you come to me when there are other male coaches out there who probably know your anatomy better, because they have the same like build or the same fatigue levels, that kind of thing. And so I think that was probably the first wave. And I think the second was, you're trusting me to make sure you make weight for your competition. That was really scary as well. And I think, as you said, like, realizing that you do know that you do know that you know what you're doing. And I think that is really a hard one. And I think every time like a client has like a bad training session, I then go, okay, but they've also had good training sessions. And for every client that has a bad day, there's also one that has a good day. And for every client that maybe misses a lift or has a disappointing competition, there's also one that has like an amazing one. And at the start, I think it's really easy to focus on everything that goes wrong. And I think that's human nature. And it's also because of the drive to want to do better, right? You don't want it to happen again. And I think those mistakes are really important, because without it, you wouldn't learn. Like, I think I had my first lifter miss weight in April by 100 grams. And I looked at everything and I tore everything apart. And I was like, Well, the fact they only missed by 100 grams shows that actually everything was right. We probably just needed to get him up earlier for a 6 a.m. weigh-in. And it's things like that. And actually, I think last year that would have completely torn me apart and made me want to just pack it in and quit. And I was like, yeah, but it happens. And also, I think without that experience, I know what to do next time. And I think you can only learn by like experience. So I think it's still a challenge, and I think it's still a challenge for everyone. But I think when you realize like the majority are happy and you get good feedback, and you kind of have to rely on that. And then from maybe any negative feedback you get, or competitions that don't go your way, or like weight cuts that don't go as planned, you learn from them. And so it's kind of just forcing yourself to have a positive outlook on everything, and it does help.
I really like that answer. I have to say that when, even to this day, like when I think most of my lifters now are men, but when I get a male inquiry come through, part of me is like, why would you pick me?
Why?
And then I'm like, oh wait, no, they are picking me because they want to work with me, and I have to tell myself that they didn't have to inquire with me.
No.
They're choosing me for a reason, and I have to have faith in that. And obviously, they're only going to work with me if they think we click. And it's just this weird feeling. And I think because there are so many amazing male coaches out there, I'm like, but why would you come to me?
yeah
I'm getting out of that mindset though. And yeah, I also think what you said about, lifters are going to miss weight sometimes. You can only control so much as a coach, and sometimes the protocol won't work, or you'll be a little bit off. But you also have to think there are lifters, literally top level lifters at world championships, that miss weight.
Yeah.
It can happen to anyone. You can follow the exact same protocol as you did last time, think everything's in place better than ever, and one little thing can go wrong. There are so many things that affect what we weigh that you can't account for every single detail.
Exactly.
It's just a learning curve, and also it's a learning curve for the lifter as well. We don't all have good meets.
No,
like you're never going to have a good meet every single time, and obviously as the coach you hate it when a lifter doesn't have a good meet, but also you do learn from it and they learn from it, and it's part of the sport.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Another thing I also wanted to speak on was you were coaching at Junior Worlds this year. You're part of Team GB's coaches.
Yeah.
Was that your first time coaching international, or had you helped out before?
So I had been an assistant a couple years ago at University Worlds after I competed, but it was not really it just wasn't the same. Like I think this was actually, this was what I would call, like I was an assistant coach for the GB Junior Worlds team, and that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. How did it come about? How did the opportunity kind of come about? How was the experience? I basically want to hear everything about it.
Okay. So I am off the back of kind of helping a bit more at University Worlds, and then making the decision to kind of compete at Estonia this year. I kind of thought to myself, well, it feels, I think there needs to be more of a separation between kind of coaching and then being an athlete as well. And so I was like, well, I've chosen to be an athlete for this competition, and had that conversation with Dan. I was like, how do you suggest I go about kind of looking into more opportunities where I can coach at like a higher level, basically? Like, what can I do? Like, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And he recommended speaking to the other head coaches. So I kind of, spoke to the Open Worlds head coach, and I spoke to the Junior Worlds head coach, and I just said, what do I do? Like, what experience do you want? What can I do to kind of put myself in a position where I'd be able to apply? And I just got sent the application and just said, look, just put your name down, like apply for this. And so I did. I didn't do that because I was like, oh, like there are a couple things that I haven't checked off yet. I'm not sure if they'd want me. And then I thought, you know what, I will put my name down because it doesn't hurt. Like I've had some experience. I've I know what it's about. I've been really lucky to be mentored by people who are coaches on the team. Like I want to say more, not permanently, but they've been out a few times. Like I've been lucky enough to be given those experience, or like had that mentoring. So I kind of put my name down, like just applied, and I got asked, I think, if I wanted to go to Commonwealth, and I was like, I can't afford it. To be honest, I was like, I just can't afford it. And then unexpectedly, I think there's just a place opened up on the juniors team, and I got a message from Jason after putting that application forward, just saying, do you want to go? And I said, yes, please. And I didn't, because at that point I'd already kind of looked at my finances for Estonia. It was obviously going out there as an athlete, it was quite expensive, and I kind of looked at that and I was like, you know what, I don't, like, this sounds like a really privileged position to be in, but money comes and goes. Like, if I work hard enough, I can make this work. And I thought it's just worth it. Like, I just didn't really give it a second thought. I thought, yeah, I'm going. Like, it doesn't really matter if it costs me an arm and a leg. Like, I'm gonna go. And it was just, I'm just so glad I did. And it was just amazing. And that's basically just how it is. I think it never hurts to ask and to reach out and to be open to opportunities, and like, just ask what you need to do, you know, and build those relationships. You know, we're fortunate enough that powerlifting is a very like small circle, it's a small world, but it's really easy to make connections with all over the world, right? Not just the UK. You can make connections and friendships with people anywhere, and you know, it's a it's a blessing and a curse, but I'd say just see it as a blessing. Like, make those relationships, like, for like, make your own opportunities, like, because we're able to do so in this sort of field. And I just, you know, that's all I did. All I did was, you know, ask and reach out and say, you know, what do I contact you on? What do you want? How can I just be better? Like, what are you looking for? And tell me and I'll do it. And then I just put my application forward, and I just ended up getting chosen because a space came available, and that wouldn't have happened, I guess, had I not reached out and just been like, hello, what do I do? Like, I'm interested. I want to gain more experience. And that's just kind of how it happened. So
I think it speaks volumes in your success as well, that you are the type of person to just reach out and ask, because you're not going to get anywhere if you don't try.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
That's exactly what you've done. You've reached out to your head coaches of the teams and you've said, what can I do? Because even if you haven't, you know, if you haven't ticked all of the boxes of what they're after, now you know what you have to tick. You know what you have to do.
Exactly.
And then next year you can go. And yeah, I think that's really cool that you reached out and you asked. And I think that's something that a lot of people would benefit from, being happy to do more. It's the same principle as if you don't know the answer to something.
Yes.
Like, if you, as a coach, there's a issue that comes up that you don't know the answer to, find someone that does and ask.
Yeah, exactly.
All you can do.
And also, like, acknowledge those like those what's the word? I guess those holes in your own knowledge. Like, it's okay to say that you don't know. It's okay to say, look, I'm crap at this. Like, don't ask me to run numbers for like a podium because I'm not experienced. That's what I want to learn. You know, that's what I want to know. But I'm really good at XYZ. Like, this is what I can bring to the team. This is what I want to be on the team for, to learn. You know, acknowledge those aspects that you're good at, and also, you know, say that you don't know when you don't know. And like, I think people will respect that a lot more.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, like, I found my own like business grew more when I was willing to sit and say what I didn't know. Before, I felt ashamed to admit if I didn't know the answer to something, but you're not going to get anywhere if you don't say that you don't know and find out and learn. Like, you, just because you don't know something, it doesn't mean you're not going to try and find it out. Exactly. It just means in this current moment, I'm not certain, or I think I know but I'm not confident. Let me go find out and I will come back and check. And I think as well, like, clients like that are paying us as well, that's what they're paying for. They don't expect you to know everything.
Exactly.
We're all human, you know, we're all learning, and there's always new things to learn as well. Like you said, you put time aside to learn new things, or to learn, or to expand your knowledge in a certain area, because you can then provide more. I think that's really important. Okay, so before we move on to you as a lifter, which is also very interesting, anything else coaching related you wanted to talk about, or anything?
I think that's kind of, to be honest, I think that's pretty much covered it. I will be really excited, or I am really excited to, I think, coach for Nottingham's coach this year, Nottingham University, and that's been like a really nice full circle thing. So as I said, like, I started the like powerlifting there, and you know, learned what the sport was there, and then I think I went to women's captain to president, and then I left, and then I came back, and coming back as coach is, yeah, it's really nice. Like, it's a really nice, I guess, full circle thing. And I think that will be another type of coaching that I have yet to kind of experience and I guess do. So I think that will be like another learning curve, which I'm looking forward to.
No, I think that'll be really fun. It'll be really cool. And like you said, it's a full circle moment. You literally didn't know powerlifting until you went to Nottingham Strong.
Yeah, exactly.
Where everything started, and now you're back there as team coach for the uni. That's really cool. Really, really cool. I'm excited to see how it goes for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so you as a lifter. So I went on your open powerlifting this morning, and I've obviously always known that you are a good lifter. But you podiumed at your second ever competition, which was also British Juniors.
Yeah.
So your second meet was British Nationals, and you came third.
I remember that. Yeah.
That was 2021. That is such a cool way to kick off your time in the sport.
It was really cool, actually. And I think it was even cooler because I had no idea what had been put on that bar, and I had no idea that I'd come third until I came off, because I was first out for squats and I was first out for bench, and then I was like, oh, I'm not first out for deadlifts. This is so nice. And then I just ended up pulling for third, and I got told I got a bronze medal, and I was like, oh, that's really cool.
I love that. So who were you by at the time?
Ben Pape.
Okay, yeah. He was your first coach?
Yeah.
So your next competition then was Bucks?
Yeah.
Which you won?
Yeah.
So that was once Bucks had qualifying totals and everything, wasn't it? So it wasn't as chaotic as the old style of Bucks.
Yes.
But yeah, you came first at your first ever Bucks as well. How was that?
I was so nervous that I missed my first squat because I missed the start command. So that kind of set the day up as, oh my God, I'm terrified. I think that was a really nice competition because Hannah Clayton and I had kind of been watching each other's training. I can't remember whether she was at British Nationals that previous competition. I can't remember, but it was basically like it was between her and I think she had a bigger squat, she had a bigger bench, and it just came down to that last deadlift. And then obviously we went to Uni Worlds together after that, and it's always been like quite a fun, I guess, little rivalry, I want to say. But yeah, I just pulling that last deadlift was, I think what happened was I pulled 160, and I don't think I needed 160 to win. I think I needed like 157, but I just remember looking at Robin, who was handling me, and I was like, I don't care, please put 160 on the bar. And I did it, and I just it was really nice because my housemates from university came to watch, and I don't know about you, but you try to explain what powerlifting is to anyone outside of powerlifting, and they're just like, oh, what is wrong with you? And they came and watched, and it was just so lovely because it was such a good day. I just remember just being just really happy, really overwhelmed, I think, but that's not unusual for me. And then just over the moon.
I think Bucks is such a community competition as well. Like, it's just, you've got your friends, and like you said, you had people come to watch as well that didn't really know powerlifting.
Exactly.
That's a perfect meet for them to come and watch, because you know that it's going to be a supportive environment. You're going to have a decent group in the crowd anyway.
Exactly.
So then have them there too, so they can see what the sport is.
Yeah, 100%.
Your next competition, Uni Worlds.
Yeah.
Which you also won.
Yeah.
That was Turkey. How was your first international?
It was the worst. I think to date it was still the worst comp I've ever done. And I was just so nervous. I wasn't feeling it on the day. I think I have this weird sort of thing when it comes to competitions, and I forget every single time. But I think in the moment I don't really enjoy it because I cannot deal with the amount of adrenaline I have. And I'm just like, why? Like, I should be able to just enjoy it. But I think obviously there was a lot riding on that competition, because going into it, there's this lovely girl, French girl, Leah Lucas, and there's more to the story because she was the one that I competed against again, like at the most recent Uni Worlds, and she was first in the nominations, way ahead, and the competition would have been between me and her, but I think it was like, okay, well, she's going to come first. She pulled out the day before, and we didn't find out until the technical meeting. And I was like, oh, holy crap, this means that I could actually win. And I just remember looking at my coach, like Ben, and I was just like, oh my God, now I'm actually, this is a bit more nerve-wracking. I don't like being nominated first. I don't like it because it just puts more pressure on it. It's just, and I got asked to re-rack, I think, my third squat, and that was just it. I was like, well, that's just, everyone just looked at me and she was like, well, she's way too nervous now. I was just shaking and I was like, why am I re-racking? And I missed it. I think I went 1 for 3 on bench again because I was so nervous. I think the spotter asked if I wanted a handout and I said no, and he couldn't hear me, and he was just, I just remember seeing his face over me and I was like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. Strength just wasn't there, and I don't think it was really anything. I think I just didn't feel on form. And again, it was at that point we had been doing a lot worse than expected, and was like, oh my God, we might actually not come first. And then it came down to my deadlift again, and I just pulled for the win, which was nice to have the deadlift there to be like, okay, this is fine. And yeah, so an unexpected win, and I think it was underwhelming because it wasn't a good performance, and the girl who should have won got injured, and it was things like that. And at the end of the day, you always have people saying, you know, shut up, you won. But I think as an athlete and as a competitor, at the end of the day, you're competing against yourself. And if you feel like it wasn't a good performance for yourself, then you're going to be disappointed regardless of the outcome. Like if I had come fourth but had an amazing day and I wasn't expected to come first, then I would have been like, yeah, happy days, like this is great. So yeah, I think that was the biggest learning curve from that one.
Yeah, I think the pressure of being ranked first, especially when you weren't originally ranked first,
yes,
if you're already a nervous lifter on comp day anyway, it's just going to make it tend, like, yes, in a way it's nice because it opens up the door, gives you the opportunity to potentially win. But then also, like you say, there's so much extra pressure. And if you're already someone that gets nervous on comp day, by the time you get to deadlifts, you must feel exhausted from the fact that you've been so nervous this whole comp. You're upset because you've basically, in your mind, you've kind of lost your chance of winning.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to, like, I mean, thankfully you've got a very good deadlift, but like mentally, you don't enjoy the experience. Like, yes, you got your final pull, which let you win, and you probably felt quite happy in that moment. But then overall, the emotions of the day were probably more negative than positive. So even though, you know, you had an amazing achievement, you won. It doesn't matter who was, like, you won out of people that were there. You were the strongest on the day. If she'd have turned up, if she was injured, she probably wouldn't have totaled more than you anyway. Things like that.
Exactly.
And that's the sport.
Yeah.
But I completely get it that you're not happy with the performance because it's not what you went to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Your next comp, British Juniors, Gymshark British Juniors. So that was the first year at Gymshark last year.
Yeah.
Third again.
Yeah.
On the podium.
Yeah. So this was a really difficult competition for me because I think it was the end of a lot of things. Like, I think I don't think I'm the only one in saying that a competition like ends the phase of like not just like a training cycle, but almost like a part of your life. Like, we dictate how many like weeks, or like we dictate our year by, oh, that competition's in April, like that's how I know what kind of time or like frame I'm in, right? And I think that competition came at the end of like a really difficult few months for me. And I'd also had a back injury since I think 3 weeks after Uni Worlds, so I had been rehabbing that whole time. So for me, the fact that I was going to compete at all was like, it was really overwhelming. My back went again 4 days before the comp, and so I didn't even think I was going to be able to compete, but it only hurt unracking squat, and it was fine. Like, it was fine on the day. I spent the next 6 months rehabbing, but that's another story. Yeah, and I think it was a competition that I was really, really proud of because I did just go out there and do it. But I think it was a really difficult one. And I think if that competition hadn't played out the way it was, I probably wouldn't be where I am, like in terms of a lot of things, because I missed out on an international spot by half a kilo, and I think I was 5th female overall on GL points because of my body weight, which kind of tells it'd be like a rough few months. I weighed in so light. But it taught me a lot of really important things. You know, I went 8 for 9, which was obviously after Uni Worlds was a massive improvement. Like I put so many kilos on my total through like rehabbing as well. Like I was over the moon with how it went. Like I got 3 for 3 on bench, which again after 1 for 3 was like a massive thing. And I was just really, really pleased with what I'd achieved. I think like the fact that I was just shy of 400 was just like unimaginable to me, and I was really proud of the performance. But it meant a lot, I think, as like the end of a chapter to like I guess a long period of rehab and just months really. So yeah, that was a memorable competition for sure.
Yeah, you added 32.5 kilos to your total from Uni Worlds to that juniors, and it was what, just under 6 months apart, I think.
Yeah.
You went in injured, your back flared up a few days before. So do you think one of the reasons that you kind of think that comp was one of your favorite ones is also because you had lower expectations going in?
Yeah, I think so. And I knew that it was going to be really tough between the three of us, and I knew that it would come down to deadlift between me and Amelia, but I also knew she had the bigger deadlift, which is not a position that I'd been in before. And I think it's really interesting because had I got my last squat, which was what, like 2.5 kilos more, I don't know if she had another 2.5 kilos on her deadlift. I mean, with the way she can deadlift, probably, but also like we did push her to the limit. So it's a bit like, would it have been, wouldn't it have been? But also then it just comes back to me for like, it happened for a reason. Like I didn't get that last squat, and once I failed it, I did kind of think to myself, oh, that's probably it. But I didn't really mind. I was kind of a bit like, it almost took the pressure off a little bit so that I could just focus on bench and deads, which was almost nice in a way. Because I guess I was just pleased that I didn't put my back out doing it either. So yeah.
Do you think you're quite a competitively driven person in terms of competing against others, or do you think you are very much run your own race?
I think in training it's motivated by what others are doing, and I think when it comes to competition day, I don't really give a crap what everyone else is doing, to be honest. Like if someone's lifting half a kilo or like 2.5 kilos more than me, if I need like another 2.5 kilos to stay in the game, but I feel like I don't have it, I'm like, well, I'm not putting it on the bar. Like I'd rather get my lifts. And I know myself very well. Like I know for me, when it comes to competition day, I will know whether I have something or not. Mainly due to nerves. Like I will think to myself, I feel like I'm going to be too nervous to lift this, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'd say when I need a bit of extra motivation, like I will look at what others are doing and I'll go, right, well, if they're capable of doing that, why am I not? Like I should be as well. But I think I am, because coming from athletics, it's like I did sprinting, I did like triple jump. It's completely against yourself. Like I didn't give a crap of what other people were doing. It was always, I'm here to beat my own time, not someone else's, or not to beat someone else. Like I couldn't tell you any of the positions I came in any races, but I could tell you like what I ran in each race in comparison to what I'd ran previously. So I guess I'm lucky because I then approach powerlifting the same way. Yeah.
Do you think as well it's knowing that in training that's the bit that counts, that's the bit that's going to get you stronger?
Yeah.
On comp day, you can lift what you can lift.
Yes.
If someone can lift more, they can lift more. Because I'm very much how you said, like, if you don't think you've got it, you're not going to load it. Because I think in my head, if I'm not sure if I've got it, I'm probably not going to try as hard because I'm like, well, I probably haven't got this anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so your next comp was your biggest total to date.
Yeah.
Super Training Christmas Classic, end of last year.
Yeah.
It was 8 for 9 day. You missed out
Yeah.
on 2.5 on bench, which you
Yeah.
can't be mad about. I think
No.
you got what you could on the day.
Yeah.
I assume that was a good comp.
That was, I think, if everyone, you know how everyone kind of has a super comp, I feel like that was probably mine. Like, and
Yeah.
probably will be mine for like a long time. So yeah, that was my super comp for sure.
That was huge. You put loads on your squat between those two comps.
Yeah, thank you, Lewis.
Was that your first comp working with Lewis?
Yes. So I joined him just after junior nationals.
Yeah. So he's quite good with injury management and stuff, isn't he? I assume
Yeah.
he helped you with rehabbing your back and things as well.
Yeah, we started from scratch, and I mean like scratch. Like I think I was doing like hook lying bench with like the bar and then 40 and not even deadlifting. I think I was just doing back extensions. So we went from that to then, yeah, I'm trying to think when was the first time I actually did like a relatively heavy squat, and it must have been, when did I start deadlifting properly? I think the first heavy-ish deadlift I did must have been like 12 to 16 weeks out. So that was, yeah, probably after a good 5 months or so, it must have been, or something like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing your training kind of blowing up as you then got healthy and stuff again. Like your bench as well improved massively.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think across the board, you literally added what, 10 to your bench, 15 to your squat, 10 to your deadlift.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's probably where it's also worth mentioning, like, don't be afraid to strip things back.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to just focus on getting healthy.
Yeah.
If you need to work on form, technique, anything, just pull it back. Because that was 8 months?
Yeah.
And you added, I can't do that maths,
I think
35 to your total again?
I think it was 30, something like that. Yeah.
And that was after a couple of years in the sport as well. Like it wasn't your first year and you added that much. Like that's
exactly
a lot to add 2 years into the sport.
I think like injury exposes a weakness, right? And you know, once it forces you to actually identify it and fix it and then build from the ground up, and so that you have a solid foundation. And this is what I say to like any of my lifters or any of my friends or anyone that gets injured. I'm like, this is a blessing in disguise, because you're going to be so much stronger, and like you're going to come back so much stronger, and like it's a good thing. Like it sucks right now, but it does get better.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also I think the mental break from pushing and pushing and pushing, stripping things back, going lighter, focusing on something different, because then when you do then gradually start to push again, you notice the wins more.
Yes.
And you enjoy that process again.
Yeah, like I felt on top of the world that whole prep. I was like, this is amazing. Like I'm hitting these numbers which I never thought were even possible, and it doesn't even feel hard because I haven't lifted heavy for so long. Like it's just really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and something I mentioned on the last podcast when I was talking to a Quinn, we were talking through, like, she's not done many meets. I think she's done like 7 meets in total. She's only been in the sport a couple of years, and she was just saying as long as she learns something from every single one,
yeah,
that's all that you can do. And I think that's literally the same thing here. Like each comp taught you something different, how you approach them and things like that.
Yeah.
You then did British bench.
Yeah.
Bit of fun bench only.
Yeah. So my bench had obviously been going so well, and I said to Lewis, I was like, he kind of suggested British bench, and I said to him, I was like, only if I'm benching 100, like I'm not doing it otherwise. And I've had previous shoulder issues that have just kind of reared their head every now and again, and I felt I kind of just get this weakness in my right shoulder. And it's interesting because I'd done 95 in that prep for super training, but a week out I just kind of felt the strength leave my body, and I was like, this is kind of like, it just kind of went, and I was like, oh, like, you know, maybe like we peaked too early for it or whatever. Like I still benched 90 and 92 wasn't there, but that's, you know, fair enough. But it just kind of got worse, and then it actually started being painful, and I was like, actually this is a bit sore now. So I'm actually really pleased that I benched 90 on the day, because bench was not, I think I'd only benched 90 once in between like super training and that comp, because I was like, this is sore. And then it got so much worse. Like I did so much physio, so much like physical therapy. I just couldn't really, still a bit sore now, to be honest. I basically had some sort of inflammation in my serratus, in my teres minor, that was kind of felt like I had like an impingement or something, like in my trap and my rhomboids. I would get pain going down my bicep. I get numbness and like tingling in my median nerve. I don't know, my delt was sore, my neck was sore, just not very good at all. So I had that the whole of prep into Estonia, which is why like we only took 85, and like it moved well because I didn't feel weak. Like I felt really strong, like my upper body felt strong, but I just couldn't get any strength off my chest. Like sometimes my shoulder would just go and I just wouldn't be able to feel anything and press, and then just get a lot of aching afterwards. So yeah, that was kind of a shame. But I was pleased we got 90. You know, I wasn't really expecting much more. I think we failed the third, so we put on like 95 to win. I was like, it's not bad, but we may as well give it a go. Like we're here.
Yeah, no, I think especially if you're not a bench only lifter, like you're doing it for a bit of fun.
Exactly.
You might as well just load it and see. Nothing's gonna happen.
No.
Then your most recent comp was Uni Worlds again.
Yes.
Well, you placed second this year.
Yeah. So again, I learned a lot from this comp, and so yeah, this was so Leah Lucas was not injured, and so she came back, and it was kind of going to be against like the two of us again. Like she had notoriously a much bigger squat. Our bench would have been about the same, but my bench is very very not the same at the moment. And then yeah, I think this was an interesting one because it was the first comp where I went into it knowing that I was not my strongest, and that this is the first time in the sport that has happened. Like as you can see, like I've made significant progress in all of my totals, and this comp I went in, I was like, the numbers that we wanted at the start of prep are just not going to be there, and that's fine. Like squat, I'm still so happy with, like still a significant improvement. Bench went 3 for 3. I'm still happy with how that went. Like honestly, when we'd gone 6 for 6 and we put ourselves in the best position possible, I was like, this could not have gone any better. Like I genuinely, like, this has gone really well. My deadlifts, can't really explain what kind of happened with them, to be honest. They'd just been off all prep. I think it's because I had a lovely secondhand strength shot belt that I got from Grace Stilgo when I first started lifting. And it fell apart. It had its last day after super training at some point. And I was like, right, time to treat myself to a fancy new belt. And I got an SBD 10 mil, and I found that it was still a bit too stiff and harsh for me because I have no torso, and I'm also like quite a back heavy lifter. So I swapped it with a friend who had a Warlander, and I put it on, and I was like, yeah, this feels really nice. And I think that must have been the thing that just meant that I couldn't lock out, because my deadlift was obviously 15 kilos less than it was at super training. And that's not because like I failed the last two on hitching, which has never happened to me before. But again, like to me, it's a strength issue, because I was like, really, that should have been an easy lift. Like that should have been an easy second attempt with where my strength is at. I can't have put that much on my squat and actually weighed in lighter than I did at super training and like feel like that. So yeah, I don't really know what happened, but I knew it wasn't going to be there on the day. And I think I said afterwards, I said to Lewis, I was like, I'm going to be honest, I'm surprised that left the floor twice, because I failed it every time in prep. Like, so for me, it was I was really proud of myself again for that competition, because it was the best possible outcome for the prep that I had. And I think it's a shame that I wasn't going into it peak strength, because it would have been really nice to like have that competitive, like actual competition with Leah. But it is what it is. Perhaps going better this time, but yeah, I learned a lot, and I think I had to remember that this is what had been only 6 or 7 months being self-employed. Like I think that had obviously been my focus for the first half of the year, and had probably taken its toll a bit without me really kind of admitting it or realizing. So yeah, it was a fun comp though. Like it was a really good week away, and I didn't regret going, or like the choice, even though I knew I wasn't going into it full strength, obviously. And I did enjoy it. Like I think it was one of my most enjoyable comps, even after I failed the deadlifts, just because it was the best possible outcome, and I think it was more satisfying than obviously what had happened the couple of years previously, even though I won, because I felt like I didn't deserve to win. Whereas this, I was like, you know what, like I feel like I deserve second, and that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to be proud of second place. You went the 6 for 6, and then obviously deadlifts just weren't there.
Yeah,
But also, you know that deadlift is normally kind of your weapon on the day.
exactly.
So bad prep, deadlifts hadn't felt good. They weren't there on the day, but you got all your squats and benches in. So
Yeah,
what's going to happen next time you have a meet when deadlifts do click in prep?
exactly.
That's the thing. And yeah, it's just learning us. But also second at Uni World is still a huge achievement.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to be proud of. And so do you think if your pull had been there on the day, I assume you would have been really close to the woman that was ranked first the year before that pulled out?
Yeah. Yeah.
So actually catching with her is a massive achievement as well.
Yeah, no, you're right, actually. So it's very true. Like, she had a fantastic prep as well. So I think it was really nice to finally meet her as well. Like, we both spoke a lot about kind of how training works and what we do and prep, and I think spoke about like the next competitions we have coming up, and I think that's really nice because we'd followed each other's training and like supported each other for so long. It's really nice to actually finally meet and kind of, yeah, I guess just speak about training and that kind of thing. So yeah, it was a really valuable competition.
That's really good to hear. And yeah, like sometimes I think it's important to take a step back and put yourself where you were a year before.
Yeah.
And a year before, when she was on the list of entries, you didn't even consider first as an option.
No.
And a year later, you were in a very close battle.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's something to also be proud of. So then what is next? What's the plan?
Open nationals at the end of the year. Yeah, so end of November, I believe. Yeah, that's the plan. Don't really know about expectations or anything yet. Like, I know like prep things are feeling good. I don't know what my shoulder's going to do yet, but I think we might hopefully be able to get back to 90. I think if squats keep trending how they do, then hopefully another PB. If deadlifts are trending how they do, maybe a small PB on super training as well. But yeah, like I'm feeling good. I'm feeling strong, and I think it will be my first open competition as well, which will be really exciting. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and I think it will also be really fun because I have 3 of my own clients in the same weight class as me, like, so we'll be competing together, which I think it'll be really nice. Yeah.
Do you think having them there like with you, especially if you might be in the same flight as well, will make it less pressure, more fun? Or do you think you'll be focused on them so much that I'm assuming you won't be handling them, obviously, but you'll obviously be there and you'll want to see what they do?
I think it will be really nice. So Katie and I did compete together at super training, and we were in the same flight, and I have to admit, she was in exactly the same boat, is that we were both so like in the zone that we kind of didn't really acknowledge each other that much. But I think if there are 4 of us, like, it would be nice at least to just check their warm-ups, how they're feeling, like for squats and like bench and that kind of thing. And I think it will be a really good day. Like, it will be nice that there's like, I guess, a team of us there, I suppose. So
Yeah, no, that will definitely be good. And I guess if you do start to get in your own head or anything about your lifts, you can just, what are they doing?
Exactly.
No, I think that'd be really cool. So with this obviously being your first year full-time coaching, do you have a few lifters doing British nationals, or is it mostly just your 57s team?
So I have a couple of under 76s as well, all females, no males this year. I had a male at Manny Open. I'm trying to think, but most of them will just be sticking to regionals at the start of next year, I think. Yeah, so yeah, it should be good. There'll be 6 of us then. So yeah, 5, and
That'll
then
be fun.
Yeah, it'll be good.
No, that's very exciting.
Yeah.
I don't think I've got any more talking points I wanted to cover, but I do want to ask you if there's anything else you want to speak about, any exciting things coming up. Obviously, you've mentioned coaching with the Nottingham Uni coming up and things like that. Any other things to look out for?
Let me think.
I mean, it's been a pretty busy year, to be fair. You would definitely allowed to say no.
Yeah, I don't actually think there's anything left like on the cards for this year, to be honest. I think in the future, I'm hoping to do maybe more regular like online seminars that I'm hoping to make like available to just anyone. Like, at the moment I'm just doing them like for my own clients, but I think, maybe getting more like like open discussions and stuff around nutrition, I think could be really cool. Apart from that, at the moment, I don't think so. I think yeah, I think I'll be focusing on trying to stay afloat for the rest of the year.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I also think more seminars and just more information out there that people can access around nutrition for strength athletes will only be a good thing.
Yeah.
There isn't loads of it. There's getting more, and I think people are taking nutrition a lot more seriously with the rise of the sport. People are realizing that actually, no, you can't just eat what you want and turn up and lift, or like eat what you want, chug loads of water the week before comp, and just, you know, you'll be fine. Like there's more to it, and people are realizing that. And I think there is a massive growth in the nutrition coaching space.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think seminars and just more content out there would be amazing.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it should be really good. And I think, as you said, there are more of us popping up. So I think that's really nice, and it's important as well. And it is still quite a new field, especially, well, like in this sport. And I think, like, you know, encouraging those kind of open discussions between all of us is really important. So I thank you very much for having me on, because it's been really nice, and hopefully people will find some value to it for sure.
No, I'm sure they will. And thank you so much for coming on. I don't know if you have spaces at the moment or anything, but if people want to follow you, reach you, contact you, anything like that, where can they find you?
Yeah, so if they just follow my either my personal, or like my personal training is 440 training, and then the coaching is 440 coaching, and most people just kind of drop me an Instagram message, but there is like a register interest in my bio, which for either powerlifting or nutrition. But if you just want to drop me an Instagram message and like start a discussion, like my DMs are always open. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you again for coming on. I thought it's been a really good chat, and hopefully, like you say, people can take bits of wisdom from places throughout the conversation. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me, and good luck at Commonwealth.
Thank you.